I'm Craig Strickland. I'm the founding pastor of Hope Church in Memphis, Tennessee. We started about 22 years ago with a core group of 6 people. We used a telemarketing campaign that's rarely used today, but it worked in those days. We called 30,000 people that lived in our community and asked them if they had a church home. People that said they did, we thanked and hung up. People who didn't have a church home, we invited to opening service at Hope. Our services the first year were in a restaurant. The nursery was in the bar of the restaurant. Our child care was down the street, and our youth ministry was in another building across the street. So it certainly wasn't easy to go to church at Hope when we began. After about a year, we had grown to about 150 people, and we moved to a high school. We rented the high school for about 6 years. And while we were in the high school, we began to think about our future. I learned a number of lessons along the way, lessons that I would not have told you would be true based on what I saw other pastors doing. Many pastors have moved from building to building to building. In the South, there is a strong tradition of owning land, and churches that don't own land are suspect. I didn't know that, had no idea that would enter into the equation in any way. But at a training retreat for our leadership, I asked the question, what do you think should be our most important goal for the future? And to the person, they said buying land and building a building. That wasn't even on my radar screen. I wasn't even planning to own a building. But a leader is not a leader if no one's following. And everyone in the church wanted us to move towards buying property and building a building. So we bought an initial 24 acres of land and built a building that seated about 600 or 700 people. The day we moved in, our attendance jumped from 300 to 800, and it never dropped below 800 again. Today, there are about, given the season, 7,000 to 8,000 adults and another 1,200 children that come to Hope and call Hope their home, and 5 weekend services. One of the things I underestimated as we started Hope Church was the fact that church plants tend to be a magnet for dysfunctional people. And we found ourselves dealing with a number of dysfunctional people. Even though I had been in ministry 10 years before I started Hope, I was surprised at the number of people that came along that I didn't realize were dysfunctional. And so we had to work our way through that. And people don't teach how to live with conflict in healthy ways. It's the church's job to model that. Another important lesson that I learned along the way. Another thing that I learned along the way is that I had seriously underestimated the importance of generous giving in the church financially. It had not been something I'd stressed, and I think that was a mistake. I'm paying for that mistake today, and things that I would do differently today, I would have pushed sooner to buy property and build a building, knowing that that is so important in a Southern culture. Now we're working to change the DNA of the church so that it becomes a church that's generous in its giving. And changing the DNA of an organization takes 3 to 5 years, in my estimation. We're about 2 years into it and doing very, very well in a recession. We have actually seen a 25% increase in our revenue this year alone. And so we're beginning to see the change in our DNA, but it will take 3 to 5 years. In closing, I would say that I underestimated how difficult planting a church really was. It was a lonely, challenging job, and I'm glad that I didn't know. I'm not sure I would have tried it had I known how difficult it was, and I attribute all of the growth that we have seen over the years to the hand of God. I don't say that with great humility so much as it's just the honest truth. And what we actually found to be the case is we saw 5 or 6 churches with the same philosophy of ministry that we had begin and then close in the last 15 years. So we believe the hand of God's been in what we're doing, and it continues to be as we learn the lessons along the way. Thanks for listening.